Hi, welcome to, I don't know what to call this. Doesn't matter what I call this. Today, we're talking about young entrepreneurship, something that myself and and my guest here, Nick Skovgaard, know quite a bit about. 10 years ago, we were both young entrepreneurs, and I have some questions for him on how the heck he and I made that happen.
It's been a pretty wild ride.
No. Thanks for joining me, Nick. I cannot wait to ask you some questions today about this.
My pleasure.
I think the burning question on the minds of anybody listening to this who is maybe like early 20s and thinking about starting their own business is how the hell do I do this? What's the first step? I'm young. I have a business idea. I have a lot of hopes and dreams, but I also have a lot of pressure over my head telling me that you can't do this. What would you say to that young person would be the first step in making their self-employment goals happen for themselves?
Progress, not perfection. Stop waiting for it to be perfect. The situation will never be perfect. You will never be ready, not in a million years. If I give you 10 more years, you will not be ready to start, I promise. So, every single person I've ever met who's an entrepreneur has the same fear. Like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I don't have the skills yet? What if I don't have enough money? What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if somebody knows more than me? And the answer is they do. You will. Right. It's going to happen. But the thing that is amazing, especially for young entrepreneurs, is like, when will there ever be a better time? So I can speak to this really clearly because I have a wife, I have 4 young children, I have a house payment, I have 2 car payments, I have insurance payment, my grocery bill is $500 freaking dollars, right? Like, the cost to be me every month is a lot of money. And when you're young and you're in high school or you're in college and you're living on ramen noodles and you're comfortable living on someone else's couch and you have an old beater car and you're like, oh man, I'm not successful yet. Well, great. That is the world's greatest superpowers for entrepreneurs. If you're an entrepreneur and you don't have fame, fortune, success, experience, like, what better time to get it?
I love it. Don't wait. That's how you would sum that up. Don't wait.
So I guess I want to veer off and tell the story really quickly. So I founded AlterEgo Marketing as a DBA, or doing business as, at my local courthouse in Williamson County, Illinois, on my lunch break. And I have to tell you, like, the history to get to that point was huge. So, like, my wife and I had notepads of like ideas for business names and what it was going to look like, and I had all these like business plan, like something I'd started but never finished.
Right.
And I literally thought that AlterEgo Marketing was something that I would do years in the future, and that I was going to wait for the moment to be right. I was going to wait for everything to be perfect. And one day I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go on my lunch break. I'm going to walk into the courthouse, and I am so nervous that they're going to think I'm stupid. So I literally walk in, and in my courthouse, you have to walk through a metal detector, and I had no idea where I was going. And it's this big, intimidating building. And I asked the security guard, I was like, where do I go to get a DBA? And he like doesn't even look up from his novel. He's just like, oh yeah, like, right there. I walk up to the counter, and there's 4 people working like way back, off. I can see them, but it's like this empty lull of an office kind of at the lunch hour. And the lady doesn't even look up, right? Like, she just sort of sits there and kind of ignores me for a moment. I'm assuming she's finishing a Sudoku puzzle or something, whatever the government employees do on their lunch hours. And like, finally she like looks up at me, makes eye contact, does one of those like, stands up and walks over to me at the counter. And she's like, well, how can I help you? I go, I need DBA paperwork. And so I'm guessing that she's going to be like, are you a real business owner? Tell me what your business idea is. Tell me everything. Like, I thought she was going to fucking interrogate me. I was like sweating and nervous. And she literally, I wish she just comes back and she's like,
here
1.5 by 11 piece of paper, throws it on the counter and leaves.
Excellent.
And so now I'm thinking like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to like justify my existence as an entrepreneur, right? I'm going to have to like fill out this dissertation and explain the purpose of my business. And it's like, what's your name? What's your address? What's your business name?
Yes. Congratulations.
Like
you have a business.
Questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
I
they
love
make it
it.
all intimidating because then you have to go run it in what's called a paper of record. And I'm not sure if that's true of every state, but at
Yeah, I
least
don't
in
think I had to
Illinois.
do that here. Mm-mm.
And so you have to run it in what's called a paper of record. And so like
Mhm.
I get done and she's like, yeah, the newspaper office is like 3 blocks that way. And I walked in and they literally couldn't care less about my business.
Oh
They didn't
no.
pay any attention to me. It was like I was putting in a classified for a lost dog. And so
Right,
I
right.
fill out the paperwork. I cut them a check. I think it was $55. And then I
Mhm.
left. And the funniest part is like they forgot about me. Like I went back 3 weeks later and they just forgot to put my shit in the paper, like
Yes.
didn't do it. So like
Amazing.
a total of 6 weeks later, I get my stuff back. I literally get it from the newspaper. I walk it into the courthouse. I sit it back, and it's the same lady. I sit it back down. And again, I'm still like anticipating, like she's going to know that I have
Yeah.
no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
She couldn't have cared less. She took my shit, she filled it out, and she hands me a certificate, or she mailed it to me. Maybe I don't
I
even
love
know.
it. And then that's it. And then you're a business.
But,
How?
but
What
Rikki,
a
like, as an entrepreneur, like I spent a year being scared of that process.
yes.
A
And
year.
what a perfect story for young entrepreneurs to hear. Because I got to say, I remember all that terror in my own business dealings. I thought everything would be like a nightmare and there would be challenges. Like, no one is going to fight you on being a business. Like, no one's going to be like, are you sure you should probably not do that? No, you just do it.
And then
You
on
just
the other end too, like all the people closest to you are the ones who are going to do that. Like your mom or your best friend.
Yeah, don't listen to them.
What are you doing as a business owner? Like no one else cares.
And they're
the
doing
funniest
it
part is,
also
like,
not because they don't think you can, but because they're afraid. Because they're afraid.
yeah,
You know?
they're terrified. They're like,
They're
oh, well,
terrified.
people with millions of dollars started marketing companies. And I was like, yeah, and so do I. I had my dining room table with like $7 in my bank account. What up?
Right. I always like to tell people too that the first 2 years of my business, I made peanuts. And when I say I made peanuts, I did not make enough money to survive on.
But you know what's funny about that?
Mm.
Like I would bet dollars to donuts that was 100% you. Like you went into that business ownership going like, it's my first 2 years. I'm not supposed to make any money.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah. I know I was holding
clients.
myself back.
I quote little amounts. I do small projects because I'm a young graphic designer.
Yeah.
Because I'm a young
quoted.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. I
did the same
quoted
thing.
every single job too low. Yeah.
I walked into clients and I was like, they're like, how much do you charge? And I'm like, $8, sir. And they're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I clearly remember a lady too. I'm a graphic designer, right? And one of my very first logo jobs, I gave the lady the quote on how much it would cost, and she was like, well, that's good because I'm on a budget. So it's good that I'm not hiring like a real designer yet. And it just like cut right to my soul. And I was like, I'm not charging enough.
and the thing is, like, what's so interesting about that is like every single time you charge more or did a better job, or like you were more proud of your work or you delivered more, your customers were okay with it for the most part. Like they're fine with it. Yeah. And I mean, there's a limit to everything, but at the same time, most of the time when you're a young entrepreneur and you start out not making enough money, it's because you don't value your own time. Totally. You know, one of the biggest single mistakes that every entrepreneur makes is they don't bill for their own time. So even if you looked at your time in production as a minimum wage job, whatever that is in your state, and you amplified how many hours it took you in the sales process, in the proposal process, in the work process, in the delivery process, and whatever it was, and you just guesstimated, how much do you think that would be? And then you figured out, if that was another person and you were managing their time, how many hours would you need to manage that other person? And you take those 2 hours, you add them together, and if you're not charging at least that amount, you don't have a business at all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to look at it.
The only person in America who can work for less than minimum wage is an entrepreneur. Like, we're terrible about it. Like, how much did you make last week? Like, well, I worked 127 hours and I made like 7 cents an hour. And that's pretty good. It's pretty good. They didn't turn my electricity off yet.
So maybe that's another message for young entrepreneurs, right? Like, you can't go into this expecting a good hourly wage right off the bat. Like you're going to be driving on your passion for a while.
I would go the other direction. I would
Really?
actually go the other direction altogether. I would say you can't go into business for yourself. You cannot go into business for yourself if the only thing you have to sell is a better price.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
So I teach a young entrepreneurship class, and every single time, every single student sits down and they write a business plan out, and they're like, look, I found this competitor who washes cars or mows grass or trims trees or does graphic design, and they charge like $80. I'll do it for 12.
Oh, yeah. That's a very, very popular, I'm going to start a business by undercutting everyone else. Yeah.
And then you realize that the reason is because you don't have an office, you don't have gas, you don't have mileage, you don't have employees, you don't have insurance, like you have no overhead. So of course it's cheaper for you to be a young graphic designer sitting in your house, working on your computer, paying yourself $3 an hour than it is for your local design agency who has 5 projects or 5 people working on every project and workman's comp and health benefits.
Right.
Of course you can beat their price. The problem is that if you price yourself lower than your competition, and that's the only thing you're offering, you're going to really quickly find out that you don't have a business.
Right. And further, they won't trust what you're doing. They won't trust what you're doing. They don't want a Walmart of a logo.
You've definitely done the thing where you're like, how much is it? And you're like, $4.
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
No, $3.
Or it was me. It was me. I'm better about it.
I could go to 2. And the person on the other side of the table was like, oh, I was expecting it to be 60 and 2's good with me.
And then you're like, no, that just cuts you to the soul. Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, like, I'm still guilty of it today, and so are you. I mean, everybody is. Like, you're looking at people in your field who are designers who are doing the Nike logo, and they're not working half as hard as you, and they're charging $1 million. And a lot of times they have a name or whatever. But I have this problem all the time. We want to deliver a higher level of product, but we're competing against ourselves in price. And so like we don't build in enough time to do it or whatever it is. And then guess who's putting in all the free hours?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. So let me circle back and steer us back to this young startup, right? This young person who has their idea. So our first piece of advice, your first piece of advice was to just start, right? Don't wait for a good time. Just start. So let's stay kind of basic. Let's get away from like the more advanced pricing and confidence, right? What do you think? So they said, okay, they're going to march down. They're going to get their DBA. What's their next step?
So the thing is, like, I will say that the other thing that happened as a result of me getting a DBA is I became really quickly, I became a company. And so this is the secret that I think that really boils down to why that just start advice is so incredibly powerful is on Tuesday, I was Nick. I was a guy who knew a little bit about marketing, and I was a nice guy who does a pretty good job. On 3 weeks later, whatever that would have been, I'm AlterEgo marketing, a creative and strategic marketing brand design with an email and a website. And all of a sudden we can help you with your marketing. Let us get you a quote. And they don't know that it's me sitting alone at my dining room table, working my ever-loving tail off to be the sales guy, the accountant, whatever. But that's okay, because when I put a name on my business, it was like somebody poured rocket fuel on the fire. Like the moment I put a name on it, it was like it gave other people permission to refer me. It's like, hey, do you know anyone who does marketing? And they're like, yeah, I know this guy named Nick. Versus like, yeah, actually, AlterEgo is really good at that. You should call them.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that kind of gave you, like, if you're just a guy walking around in regular clothes before, that was your suit that you put on that made you feel like the rest of the world would look at you.
It was my alter ego.
It was your alter ego. Yeah. Fantastic. But so that's it. So just start. Also, maybe don't worry about the fact that you aren't as big as you want to be, right? Would that be good advice too?
I think that you nailed it there is the thing that prevents most people from starting is that when you look at a business, almost any business,
Mhm.
and you decide where you want to go, what often happens is that you do this thing where you're like, hey, I want to be like them. Except for they
Mhm.
have a decade or 2 decades or 5 decades on you. And so now you're like, "Oh, I wanna be a graphic design agency. I wanna be a marketing agency. I wanna be an author," whatever it is, and you're
Mhm.
looking at somebody who was where you are a decade ago. Can you
Absolutely.
imagine all of the things that they fucked up and failed on? Can you
Well,
imagine all of the things they learned the hardest way imaginable?
Well, you can't as a young startup. You can't even fathom all the hard times that they went through. And that right there is the root of imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Yep.
They are looking at the starting line of a race at people who are already standing at the finish line. They aren't imagining all the steps it took them to get to that finish line. They're just going, I don't look like that, and that makes me feel like I shouldn't start, right?
Yep. Yeah, and so one of my favorite quotes is that we judge ourselves by the summation of like everything that has ever happened to us, right? 24
Mhm.
hours a day, 365 days a year, you were in your
Mhm.
brain. And so like every embarrassing moment that like you replay in the shower or in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. when you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe that I did that or I wore that or whatever. Like you were
Right.
there for every one of those moments. Now look
Mhm.
at all of the people that you look up to. You judge yourselves by every moment in your life, and you judge them by their 5 minute highlight reel, the
Yeah.
5 best minutes of their entire life, them
Mhm.
winning the award, them having this, big company or whatever it is. And like, not only that, but then they're 10 years ahead of you too. Of
Oh my
course
gosh,
you
all
feel
the
like shit.
experience. Yeah. Yeah. How helpful is that to tell a young entrepreneur like your heroes laid awake at night beating themselves up over stuff that they screwed up. Like
And if
it's
you
not
asked
easy.
almost any of them, if you had the opportunity to interview your heroes and you said
Mhm.
like, "Hey, did you know it was all going to work out?" Like the clips are always like, some Emmy winner being like, "Now I've dreamed about this since I was a little girl." And the
Yeah. Yeah.
reality is, the second you get anyone who's successful behind closed doors and actually talk to
Mhm.
them, they'll say like, "Oh no, I screwed up everything. I thought I was
Yeah.
going to go bankrupt 9 times.
Yeah.
I hated my life. I failed at my first company. I did this. The guy who founded, I think it was Netflix, did an
Mhm.
entire thing about how he's created like 5 companies, and
Oh,
4 of
wow.
them were terrible. And then
Yeah.
he created Netflix, and now he's a billionaire or whatever. But like, you don't understand. The average successful entrepreneur has
Mhm.
tried and failed more than you can possibly imagine. And
Really?
think if you think that you're going to do it your first try without making any mistakes, like you're doomed. Of
Yeah.
course you're doomed.
That's huge. That's huge. I am personally requesting that you put that into all speeches that you give to young entrepreneurs going forward. Like they don't know that, they
Mhm.
don't know that, and they need to know. I think we imagine when we see a successful business person that they just got lucky and they started and everything went great and now here they are, and it's just simply not like that
There's a
ever, I
quote, I'm
don't
going to
think.
butcher it, but it's like an overnight success, 3 years in the making, right?
Hmm.
It's like, think of like, I mean, you just wrote a book and you have done
Hmm.
extremely well, but think of like all the heartache and anxiety and stress and frustration and imposter
Yeah.
syndrome that you dealt
Yeah.
with. Like during when you were writing a book, and in that time you amassed 30,000 followers on Instagram, so clearly you were saying something that resonated with people, and yet
I must have been.
that
And I
whole
have to
time you were
say,
freaking out.
and just for anybody listening to this, I had already sold hundreds of books, and I'm laying in bed talking to my boyfriend, and I'm going, I don't think anyone's going to want to read this. And he's like, Rikki, hundreds of people have already purchased this thing. Like, where is your
and
self-confidence?
and
It's okay.
30,000 people follow you on social media. And think about this, like, one, you have that anxiety where you are right now, and
Mhm.
a year ago you would have given anything to have the knowledge that
Anything.
you have right now.
Oh
And
my
a
gosh.
year before
Yeah.
that, can you even imagine if I would have said like, hey, in 2021 you're going to successfully write, publish, and print a book?
And
And you
sell
would
it.
be like, if I sell 3 copies of that book, I will be happy. And the thing is, like, we move our own goalposts, right? The
We
second
do.
you get to the top of the
No,
mountain, all
that's
you
it.
do is stare out into the field and go like, oh, that one's bigger. I don't want to. Oh, gosh,
Yeah.
everybody's so far ahead of me every
Mhm.
time.
What a perfect thing. That's it. And when you're imagining somebody standing there at my starting line, if I could have seen this, I would have thought, well, she's going to feel like enough when she
Well,
gets to
and
this
not
point.
like
And I
I if young Nick Skovgaard graduating college could
don't.
see where I am right now, what my
Hmm.
life looks like, what I've accomplished, what I've done, what my resume looks like, what my portfolio looks like, the clients that I have right now. If I were to go back in time and show that to young Nick Skovgaard, I swear to you, I would have not only told you that all of my dreams had come true and that I was
Yes.
successful beyond all measure, and I would be beyond, like, I don't think I would have believed you. Even if you had shown
Yeah.
it to me in a way that I could not refute, I don't think I would believe you. And you know what's funny? Is
What?
today, right now, I'm 37 years old. And
Mhm.
I'm like, man, I haven't done shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Isn't
I'm
that
just
wild?
getting started.
Okay, 21-year-old Rikki, same boat, right? If I would have said that, I would have been like, "Oh my gosh!" I would be talking to my future self. You made it, and future Rikki and future Nick are right here. And Nick, have we made it? No.
No, not even close. Yeah, hey,
I
you can I blow your mind?
yeah, go ahead.
You could have shown 21-year-old Rikki 2 different versions of herself, the designer and the author, individually, and either one of those would have blown her fucking mind.
It's true.
And
It's
you
true.
have both of those
Yeah.
right now, and still you're like, I don't know if anyone's
haven't
gonna
made
read
it.
my book.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know, like, maybe I should go back for my master's degree in design.
Not design, psychology. I'm going to. But still, that's it.
But again, like, and again, for what you're doing from an author standpoint, there's some credence to that. But the thing is, like, you're still looking for external validation to a lot of things, and we all are, right?
Yeah.
Like, I won this last year the Carbondale Chamber of Commerce's, like, Young Professional of the Year.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting in the audience as I worked in the world of, like, radio sales. And I remember going to these things and being bored out of my mind because I didn't want to go,
Mhm.
and looking at these people who I thought were, like, wildly successful. They were like, they're on the board of the Chamber of Commerce and they're winning awards. And I remember thinking, like, someday I want to do that. And I got it. It sits on my desk and I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm in the shoes of those people who I looked up to. And you know what happened? The second I got there, I was like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
Because now
crazy?
that I'm here, it doesn't feel like that big of a deal.
And that's the thing too. You think that you're going to feel differently when you get to a certain point. You don't. Just this morning, I was on a podcast. It's the biggest one that I've been on yet. And this couple who started this app, they're interviewing me about my book. And I think they're older than I am. They look like they are.
1 second. I want to just go back for a second. You were on a podcast from a couple that started an app interviewing you about your book. Just want to say that out loud.
All right. That's okay. I guess that is. Should I pat myself on the back? That's pretty cool.
That's a huge accomplishment.
But I want to say to any young person listening to this, I'm sitting here being interviewed by and they're just like, they look kind of starry-eyed, like they liked what I had to say. And in the very back of my mind, I thought, I wonder if they know that I am not like, this is the imposter
syndrome. I'm not that big of a deal. Like,
that I'm not that big of a deal. Yeah.
But like, that's imposter syndrome, like, sneaking through.
That's imposter syndrome.
I want to share a quote with you, right? So Peter Dinklage, who played the imp in Game of Thrones, gave a commencement speech. And he said in his commencement speech, he said, quit waiting for the moment in life that will define you. The moments in life that will define you have already happened. You just don't know it yet.
Wow.
And I think about that all the time. I think about all of the things that have happened in my life, all of the accomplishments that in the moment didn't feel like much. I
Yeah.
had several things happen in my early career. Literally, one of them, I got fired from one of my very first jobs. What I would have told you at the time was my dream job. And
Mm-hmm.
do you think I like got fired and went like, yeah, that's gonna build character.
Defining
I'm
moment.
glad
No.
this happened. No, I went out and fucking cried in my car. Like I
Yes,
thought my life was
absolutely.
over, right? But
Right?
the thing is, no matter how you cut it, it's like those moments you don't realize as they happen that they're so incredibly important. What
Yeah.
you
And
think of
necessary.
is like this is hard or this is difficult or even like I'm getting interviewed by this podcast and it's like it's not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
But
Right.
what you don't realize is that as you look back on that, there might be somebody who's watching that podcast that you connect with in 2 weeks that knows somebody who's a publisher or who knows somebody who's another author.
It's
And like
true.
you could collaborate with them and then you could be writing a book with them in 2 years and it could be on the New York Times bestseller
That
list. And
could
you
be
don't
the book.
know that
Yeah.
it all happened right there. Because, and
Mhm.
let me point this out, Rikki, where do we meet?
Networking. Small. What was that? It's a networking group for young entrepreneurs and small business.
13 Pro.
Yeah, 13 Pro. That's
Do you
right.
remember where it was?
Let me think. It would have been maybe even the first meeting that I attended, right?
Okay.
I don't remember. Do you remember the moment we met? Because I don't. I
Nope.
don't.
Is that not a perfect description? We've worked together for like what, 15 years now? Like
Probably
I know
no.
that you've changed my life. I hope that I've had an impact in your trajectory.
Absolutely.
Career, but like look at
Absolutely.
where
But
we are right now. And like that moment didn't even register.
it
Like,
didn't. And I tell
when we met-
I tell a lot of people when I talk about you and our friendship, I say I remember when I was maybe like 23, I think, and we were sitting at what was it? What's the place in Southern Illinois with their famous sweet tea? The
McAllister's.
McAllister's. I think we were at maybe McAllister's, and we were talking about like, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own businesses someday? And we were like, oh my gosh, that would be so cool.
That sounds crazy.
That
But
sounds
so, like, you think
crazy.
it's like, I think that's the thing that no one realizes is that the ripples that come from whatever your action are can get so big and so out of control so quickly and can set in motion a chain of reactions that can totally transform your life. That the temptation is, I have to make this next big thing, right? This thing that's gonna this life-changing thing. I'm gonna have to make that happen. And I have to make that happen right now. And the answer is absolutely not.
No.
We're going to have to wrap up, but I think this is the beginning of a long-running series here. I had a lot of fun today.
I think, these are important messages. If I could talk to young, early 20s me, I would want to say all these things, and I think it would have helped out a lot.
Yeah, and I think that we could go back through a lot of those basics, and I think that there's somebody out there who needs to hear it, and for me, like that's it. Like if I can make the kind of difference that a couple people in my 20s made for me, I don't care how long it takes. I'll put in the time.
Awesome. Well, let's do this again. How about
All right,
that?
sounds great, Rikki.
Okay,
Signing off. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.